Hello, CBC family and friends. This is Pastor Kathleen, and I'm so glad that you're taking some time today to spend in God's Word. When everything changes, which, oh my goodness, it has for every one of us, I find it to be so helpful to have some rhythms that don't change, like spending time in God's Word, reading, reflecting, listening for that phrase or that verse that stands out to me, a word of encouragement or challenge that's just what I need. So I wonder, what will that be for you today? This past weekend, we were reminded that our world changes, but God's promises don't. So what is the promise that I need to be reminded of today, that you need to be reminded of today? We're going to be reflecting on Psalm 62, and I like to think of this psalm sort of as a note to self. So I wonder, what is the note to self that you need? You know, that reminder now that will be really helpful in the future, whether the future is an hour from now, the end of today, or the end of this week. Now, the book of Psalms was the worship guide for the Hebrew people, and it included songs and poetry and prayers, and it reminds us that we can express all of our thoughts and feelings to God. We are safe in His presence. Now, Psalm 62, it says, is a psalm of David, so it was written by David, and it was offered to Jeduthun, who was one of the worship leaders at the time, so apparently it was meant to be sung. But I don't know the tunes, so I am going to read it. Listen to Psalm 62. Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him. Truly He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down? This leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. Surely the lowborn are but a breath, the highborn are but a lie. If weighed on a balance, they are nothing. Together they are only a breath. Do not trust in extortion or put vain hope in stolen goods. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. One thing God has spoken, two things I have heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love. And you reward everyone according to what they have done. So when David was under intense pressure, feeling assaulted by others, he shares with us this note to self. He reminds us that there is some benefit in having and finding some stillness, especially when we're under stress, remembering who God is. And it takes time to pause and be quiet to do that. I like what some translations, how they put verse 1, is say, for God alone my soul in silence waits. From Him comes my salvation. So that idea of not only pausing to be still, but that pausing to be quiet, if we're able to be silent, and in that, to be able to hear from God, to be reminded of who He is. It's interesting to me in this psalm that verses 1 and 2 obviously begin the psalm, and then in the middle, verses 3 and 4, he describes the pressure that he's under. And then he, again in verses 5 and 6, he sort of repeats that note to self. It's like after reflecting on the extreme pressure, he needs to remind himself again that it's really important to take time to pause, to be still, even to be quiet. But what I really noticed was the difference, a little bit of change between the end of verse 2 and the end of verse 6. So the end of verse 2, he says, He is my fortress, I will never be shaken. The end of verse 6, he says, He is my fortress, I will not be shaken. Again, like note to self. I'm pausing to remember who God is. I'm just being still, I'm being a bit quiet. And because of that, I will not be shaken, even though there's intense pressure, even though there's opposition. Potentially, even though I feel discouraged, I will not be shaken. I will remember who God is. So for me, that's the first note to self from this psalm, the invitation to pause, to be quiet, to be still, as best as I am able. And then the second note to self is in verse 8. Maybe it's a note to others, a note to self and to others. But listen to verse 8 again. It says, "Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge." So note to self, there are times when, even though I trust God, in the midst of intense pressure, I just need to pour out my heart to God. Whether it's journaling, whether it's maybe screaming, crying, taking a walk, I don't know. What does it look like for you to pour out your heart to God? So, being reminded of these notes to self from this psalm. So whether it's the need to be still, to pause, to be quiet, or the invitation to pour out my heart to God, in both of those, remembering that God is my rock. He is my refuge. He can be trusted. So I wonder, what is the note to self that you need to be reminded of, that you need now and will help you later today, even later this week? And whatever it is, I hope that you will also remember the end of the psalm, which is sort of the blessing that we go with, to remember that God is the one who is all-powerful, and God is the one who constantly offers us unfailing love.